Branded barren by her family, she was sent away, until a grieving duke whispered, "I need your love." The morning mist clung to Northfell's rolling hills like a funeral shroud, obscuring the Vale family estate from merciful view. Within its stone walls, Lady Seraine Vale stood before her father's mahogany desk, her slender fingers intertwined so tightly, her knuckles blanched white as parchment. The physician's proclamation hung in the air, an invisible brand searing into her very soul, barren, useless, a vessel without purpose. "The bloodline ends with you," Lord Vale pronounced, his voice as cold as the marble beneath their feet. He did not look at his daughter, but rather through her, as if she had already faded into nothingness. 26 years of careful breeding and education, wasted upon a fruitless branch. Lady Marwen Vale, resplendent in violet silk that matched the cruel set of her mouth, placed an ornate calling card upon the desk. "The Duke of Thornfield has need of a companion. His household has fallen into disarray since the passing of his wife and child." Her eyes, green and sharp as cut emeralds, swept over her daughter's trembling form. "He seeks neither wife nor mother for his heirs, so your deficiency shall not matter." Seraine's chin lifted almost imperceptibly. "Who would cast me out, mother? Your own flesh. Flesh that cannot continue our line is of no consequence," Lady Marwen replied, adjusting her brooch with manicured fingers. "The carriage departs at dawn. Take only what befits your new station. One trunk, no more. The servants have been instructed." That night rain lashed against the windows of her childhood bedchamber as Seraine folded her simple gowns with shaking hands. Each garment represented a memory soon to be abandoned. The blue muslin worn during summer picnics, the grey silk from her cousin's wedding, the lavender day dress sewn by her own hand during long winter evenings. She placed each within the trunk, alongside a small volume of poetry and her mother's silver hand mirror, stolen in a moment of rebellious sentimentality. Morning arrived with cruel swiftness. No farewell breakfast awaited her. No embraces were exchanged. The household staff lined the entrance hall in solemn formation, their eyes downcast as she passed. Only Mrs. Finch, her aging nursemaid, dared press a small sachet of dried lavender into her palm with a whispered blessing. The family solicitor appeared from the study, a sealed document in hand. "The terms of your removal, Lady Seraine. Your allowance shall be modest but sufficient. Should you return unbidden, it shall cease forthwith." "And if I refuse this exile?" Seraine inquired, her voice surprisingly steady. "Then you shall have nothing," he replied, adjusting his spectacles. "Not even the name you bear." The carriage awaited, black and somber against the pale dawn. Her father stood on the uppermost step, hands clasped behind his back, watching as footmen loaded her solitary trunk. Not once did he speak, not even as she curtsied before him one final time. "Goodbye, father," she whispered, searching his impassive features for any flicker of regret. He nodded curtly, turned on his heel, and disappeared into the manor. The great oak door closed with a resounding finality that echoed through Seraine's very bones. The journey stretched interminably across the countryside, miles unfolding beneath iron-rimmed wheels. Villages appeared and vanished through rain-streaked windows. Seraine watched them pass in hollow silence, her reflection a ghost upon the glass. By afternoon, rolling meadows gave way to dense woodland, and finally, as dusk descended, the sprawling silhouette of Thornfield Manor emerged against the darkening sky. Unlike the Vale estate's manicured perfection, Thornfield wore its grief openly. Ivy choked the stone facades, untrimmed and wild. Gardens, once meticulously tended, now sprawled in melancholy abandonment. Even the gravel drive crunched mournfully beneath the carriage wheels, as if protesting this intrusion upon its solitude. A solitary figure awaited her arrival, tall and imposing against the twilight. The Duke of Thornfield stood without footman or ceremony, his raven hair touched with silver at the temples, his countenance carved from granite and shadow. As the carriage door opened, Seraine gathered every fragment of her dignity and stepped down without assistance, her gaze meeting his with quiet defiance. "Lady Seraine Vale," she announced, curtsying with perfect, practiced grace. "Sent to serve as your companion, your grace." "Sent," he repeated, the single word weighted with understanding. His eyes, storm-grey and penetrating, studied her with unsettling intensity. "Not come willingly, then. Few journeys of necessity begin with willing hearts, your grace." The ghost of something, perhaps respect, flickered across his severe features. "Indeed." He gestured toward the manor's imposing entrance. Welcome to Thornfield, Lady Seraine, a house of ghosts and silence. I trust you shall find both suitable companions. She ascended the steps beside him, spine straight, chin lifted. Behind them the carriage departed, wheels splashing through puddles with increasing urgency, as if fleeing some unseen threat. Seraine did not look back, even as the heavy oak door creaked open to reveal the cavernous darkness beyond. The door closed, the lock turned, and somewhere in the vast echoing manor, a clock struck the hour, each chime sealing her fate with merciless precision. Morning light filtered reluctantly through heavy damask curtains, casting Seraine's chamber in muted amber hues. She had slept fitfully, haunted by dreams of locked doors and endless corridors. The room assigned to her, spacious yet austere, bore little evidence of recent habitation. A fine layer of dust had settled upon the writing desk, undisturbed save for the path her finger had traced the night before. A quiet knock announced the arrival of a maid, a slight girl no older than 16, bearing a breakfast tray and wide, curious eyes. "Good morning, my lady," she curtsied, setting the tray upon a small table by the window. "I'm Nell, assigned to your service. His Grace requests your presence in the library once you've broken your fast." Seraine nodded, studying the girl's nervous demeanor. "Thank you, Nell. How long have you served at Thornfield?" 3 years, my lady." Nell busied herself drawing back the curtains. "Since before the Duchess and young master," her voice faltered. "The house was different then, brighter. And how many staff remain?" "Just 7 now, my lady. Cook, 2 maids, the gardener, though he comes but twice a week, Mrs. Winters the housekeeper, Mr. Thorne the butler, and old Jenkins who tends the horses." Nell hesitated. "Most left after the funeral. Couldn't bear the silence, they said." Seraine sipped her tea, finding it perfectly brewed despite the manor's apparent disarray. "And the Duke? What manner of master is he?" The girl twisted her apron between slender fingers. "Fair but distant, my lady. He speaks little, eats less, spends his days in the library or walking the grounds at dusk." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes in the night, we hear him pacing the east wing, where the nursery was. Mrs. Winters says grief has hollowed him from within." After a modest breakfast of toast and preserves, Seraine dressed with careful simplicity in a dove-grey gown, her chestnut hair swept into a modest chignon. The corridors of Thornfield stretched before her like a labyrinth, adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors and landscapes shrouded in perpetual twilight. Twice she took wrong turns before finally discovering the library's massive oak doors. She paused, straightened her shoulders, and knocked with quiet determination. "Enter." The Duke's voice resonated from within, deep and commanding. The library revealed itself as a sanctuary of leather and parchment, towering shelves climbing toward a vaulted ceiling where dust motes danced in shafts of colored light from stained glass transoms. Amidst this temple of knowledge sat Eadric Thorne, Duke of Thornfield, his tall frame bent over an ancient tome, quill in hand. "You requested my presence, Your Grace," Seraine announced, remaining near the door. He looked up, his penetrating gaze traveling from her modest slippers to her unadorned hair. Without spectacle or ceremony, he closed his book and gestured toward an armchair opposite his own. "Lady Seraine, I trust your accommodations prove sufficient." "More than adequate, Your Grace," she replied, crossing the vast expanse of carpet between them with measured steps. "Your household has been most attentive." "What little remains of it," he remarked, setting aside his quill. "Your family's letter mentioned your skills include reading, correspondence, and household management. Among others, yes. Yet conspicuously absent was any mention of why the esteemed Vale family would relinquish a daughter of marriageable age to serve as companion to a reclusive widower." His gaze sharpened. "I find such omissions rarely accidental." The challenge hung between them, clear and unmistakable. Seraine felt heat rise to her cheeks, but refused to avert her eyes. "My value diminished when my base limitations became known," she answered, her voice steady despite the shame burning in her breast. "I was deemed unmarriageable, and therefore without purpose. Your need for a companion provided a convenient solution to their embarrassment." "Limitations?" One dark eyebrow arched inquiringly. Seraine's hands folded tightly in her lap. "The physician confirmed I shall never bear children, Your Grace. A woman's primary duty failed before it began." She expected derision, perhaps pity. Instead, the Duke's expression remained impassive, revealing neither judgment nor compassion. "I see," he said simply, rising from his chair to approach a globe in the corner. His fingers traced invisible paths across continents as he continued. Then we are both damaged vessels, Lady Seraine. I, a duke without duchess or heir. You, a lady without prospect or progeny. Perhaps that is why your family selected Thornfield. Broken things belong together. I am not broken, Your Grace, Seraine replied, a spark of defiance kindling within her chest, merely different from what was expected. For the first time, something resembling surprise flickered across his austere features. He studied her with renewed interest, as one might examine a familiar painting suddenly cast in unexpected light. Indeed, he murmured. Well, Lady Seraine, damaged or merely different, your duties here shall be simple. My correspondence requires attention. The household books have fallen into disarray, and the library cataloguing remains unfinished since— He paused, a shadow crossing his face. Since my wife's passing. Seraine rose, recognizing dismissal in his tone. I shall begin immediately, Your Grace. One more thing, he called as she reached the door. The east wing is private. Under no circumstances are you to enter without express permission. Is that understood? Perfectly, Your Grace. Very well. Mr. Thorn shall provide the ledgers and pending correspondence. We dine at 6, though you need not attend if solitude is preferable. I am hardly illustrious company. Seraine paused, her hand upon the doorknob. If I may be so bold, Your Grace, I was not sent here for illustrious company. I was sent because neither of us was deemed worthy of it. She departed before he could respond, closing the door with quiet precision. Only then did she permit herself a trembling breath, her heart pounding against its cage of bone and propriety. Behind her, silence reigned, broken only by the faint sound of the Duke's chair creaking as he resumed his seat. In the corridor, weak sunlight spilled through rain-spattered windows. Seraine watched water trails race down the ancient glass, each droplet charting its lonely course into oblivion. Somewhere in the vast manor, a clock chimed the hour, its resonance echoing through empty chambers and hollowed hearts. With shoulders squared and chin lifted, she turned toward the study where Mr. Thorn awaited with ledgers and obligations. The first day of her exile had begun in earnest, each step carrying her further from the life she had known, and deeper into the shadows of Thornfield Manor. The letter from her mother lay unopened in her pocket, its seal unbroken. Tomorrow would be soon enough to read final judgments. A fortnight passed in solemn procession, each day marked by routine rather than joy. Seraine rose with the dawn, breakfasted in solitude, and devoted her mornings to the household ledgers, which had indeed fallen into disarray. Afternoons found her answering correspondence or organizing the library's extensive collection. Dinner was a silent affair, the Duke's presence as austere as the candelabras that illuminated their meager conversation. On this particular morning, however, Seraine paused her work at the curious sound of carriage wheels crunching upon the gravel drive. Visitors were unprecedented at Thornfield. The Duke's isolation was notorious throughout the county. Setting aside her quill, she approached the library window, careful not to disturb the heavy drapes. A handsome barouche had arrived, its polished surface gleaming in the pale sunlight. From it descended a woman of remarkable beauty, golden curls cascading beneath a fashionable bonnet, her emerald travelling dress cut in the latest London style. Behind her, a maid struggled with an abundance of hatboxes and valises. "Lady Emmeline Blackwood," the Duke's voice announced from the doorway, startling Seraine from her observations. "My late wife's cousin. She descends upon Thornfield biannually to ensure I have not succumbed to complete savagery." Seraine turned, finding him closer than anticipated, his tall frame silhouetted against the morning light. "Shall I make myself scarce, Your Grace?" A shadow of something, perhaps amusement, crossed his severe features. "On the contrary, Lady Seraine, I would consider it a personal kindness if you remained present during her visit. Lady Emmeline's solicitude is invariably accompanied by matrimonial aspirations I have neither the patience nor inclination to discourage." Before she could formulate a response, the library door burst open, admitting a cloud of French perfume and rustling taffeta. "Cousin Adric!" Lady Emmeline exclaimed, sweeping into the room like a summer storm. "How positively medieval you look, shut away in this mausoleum. I vow the curtains hang more heavily with each visit." Her cornflower eyes alighted upon Seraine with predatory swiftness. "And who, pray tell, is this?" The Duke stepped forward, his posture stiffening almost imperceptibly. "Lady Seraine Vale, recently engaged as companion and secretary. Lady Seraine, may I present Lady Emmeline Blackwood?" Lady Emmeline's assessment was swift and dismissive, cataloguing Seraine's modest attire and unadorned hair with a single glance. "Vale? Of the Northfell Vales?" At Seraine's nod, her smile sharpened. How unexpected. I was acquainted with your mother during the London season, such a formidable woman with such exacting standards. How curious that she would permit her daughter to accept such a position. My mother's permissions became irrelevant when she determined I had failed her expectations, Seraine replied evenly, her spine straight as a blade. Failed? Lady Emmeline's perfectly arched eyebrows rose with theatrical surprise. How absolutely intriguing! Perhaps you shall enlighten me over tea. Her attention swiveled to the Duke. Adric, I shall take tea in the blue salon. Do instruct that dour housekeeper to air the room properly this time. The mustiness during my last visit was positively medieval. With that pronouncement, she swept from the library, leaving a lingering cloud of perfume and tension in her wake. My condolences, the Duke murmured, once she had departed. Lady Emmeline considers other people's misfortunes the most delectable refreshment. I have weathered worse storms, Your Grace, Seraine replied, returning to her desk with determined composure. Though I confess myself surprised she recognized my name, the Vales rarely ventured into society beyond our immediate circle. Lady Emmeline makes it her business to know every family of consequence, particularly those with eligible daughters. He moved to stand beside her desk, his presence casting a shadow across her ledgers. She will attempt to extract your history over tea. You need not attend if the prospect proves distasteful. Seraine's quill paused above the parchment. With respect, Your Grace, I have never shrunk from unpleasant duties. Besides, she added, a rare note of sardonic humor entering her voice, someone must prevent her from measuring the drapes for her future residence. For the first time since her arrival at Thornfield, something resembling a smile briefly transformed the Duke's stern countenance. The change was so startling, so unexpectedly human, that Seraine found herself momentarily transfixed. Very well, Lady Seraine. Consider yourself armed for battle. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. Lady Emmeline's intelligence network rivals the Crown's. By tomorrow, she will know precisely why you were sent away. Be prepared. Tea in the blue salon proved every bit as interrogative as anticipated. Lady Emmeline positioned herself upon the settee like a general surveying a battlefield, her questions surgically precise beneath a veneer of solicitous concern. Such a tragedy when a young lady's prospects narrow, she lamented, stirring her tea with calculated delicacy. Though I confess myself puzzled. The Vale's connections could surely have secured a more advantageous position than companion to a reclusive widower, unless, of course, there were circumstances that limited your options considerably. Seraine met her gaze steadily. Indeed, Lady Emmeline, I find myself unfashionably honest and inconveniently principled. Such limitations prove disastrous in the marriage market. How droll, Lady Emmeline replied, her smile never reaching her eyes. Though I suspect there's more substance to the story. Rumours reach even London drawing rooms, my dear. Rumours are the devil's arithmetic. They multiply without reason and divide without conscience. Beautifully said, Lady Emmeline conceded with feline appreciation. Though arithmetic suggests another calculation entirely. The Duke's fortune is considerable, his title impeccable, and his need for an heir pressing. A companion stands closer than most to such requirements. Seraine set down her teacup with careful precision. If you imply I have designs upon His Grace's title or fortune, you misjudge me entirely. I was sent here because I cannot provide heirs. For any man. The physician was most conclusive. The words hung in the air, stripped of pretense or protection. Lady Emmeline's expression shifted from predatory interest to genuine surprise, then calculated reassessment. How remarkably candid, she finally pronounced, and how very convenient for cousin Adric, who has declared repeatedly he shall never replace his dear Catherine, nor seek another heir after Edward's tragic passing. There is nothing convenient about grief or barrenness, Lady Emmeline, Seraine replied softly. They are burdens, not strategies. Something approaching respect flickered briefly in the other woman's gaze. Perhaps, though burdens shared often weigh less heavily. She rose, smoothing her skirts with manicured hands. I shall rest before dinner. Travelling always exhausts me terribly. After Lady Emmeline's departure, Seraine remained in the blue salon, watching raindrops begin their melancholy descent upon the window panes. The admission of her condition, spoken aloud for only the second time, left her feeling strangely unburdened. The shame remained, a dull ache beneath her ribs, but its edges seemed somehow less sharp in the saying. She did not hear the Duke's approach until his reflection appeared in the rain-streaked glass beside her own. I trust Lady Emmeline's inquisition proved illuminating, he said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. For whom, Your Grace? Seraine asked, not turning from the window. For her, certainly. For yourself, perhaps. He stepped closer, his tall frame casting both their reflections in shadow. There is a curious liberty in speaking aloud the very thing the world condemns us for. It loses some power in the telling. Seraine turned then, surprised by the understanding in his usually impassive face. You speak from experience. Grief makes pariahs of us all, Lady Seraine. I am condemned for refusing to replace my wife and child with convenient substitutes. You for lacking the physical capacity to create such substitutes. Society rarely forgives either transgression. A peculiar intimacy settled between them, not of passion or even friendship, but of recognition. Two souls set apart by the very things that made them unsuitable to the world's expectations. Lady Emmeline believes I have designs upon your title, Seraine confessed, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Lady Emmeline sees matrimonial conspiracies where most see furniture, he replied dryly. It is her particular talent. Their shared moment of levity dissolved at the sound of approaching footsteps. Mrs. Winters appeared at the door, her perpetually concerned expression more pronounced than usual. Begging your pardon, your grace, my lady, a messenger has arrived from Northfell. She extended a silver salver bearing a letter sealed with the Vale family crest. For Lady Seraine, most urgent, he said. The letter sat between them, its red wax seal gleaming like a drop of blood upon pristine linen. Seraine stared at it, her earlier composure fracturing at this tangible reminder of all she had left behind. Shall I leave you to your correspondence? The Duke inquired, his formal tone returning. Seraine reached for the letter with fingers that betrayed the slightest tremor. No, your grace. Whatever judgment it contains, it changes nothing. I am here now. She broke the seal with deliberate precision, unfolded the heavy parchment, and began to read. As her eyes traversed the elegant script, her face drained of color, her lips pressing into a bloodless line. Lady Seraine? The Duke's voice seemed to reach her from a great distance. Wordlessly, she extended the letter. He hesitated, then accepted it, his expression darkening as he read. When he looked up, something dangerous flickered in his storm-grey eyes. Your father has fallen gravely ill, he stated, his voice carefully measured. Your mother summons you home immediately, not for reconciliation, but to sign documents renouncing any claim to the Vale estate or fortune, should he not recover, to protect the patrimony from the Barren daughter, Seraine whispered, her voice hollow. Even in death they would ensure my exile remains complete. The Duke studied her pale face with uncharacteristic intensity. What will you do? Before she could answer, the dinner gong sounded, its resonant tone echoing through Thornfield's shadowed corridors. From upstairs came the sound of Lady Emmeline's door opening, followed by her melodious laugh as she descended toward the dining room. I shall do what duty requires, Seraine replied, gathering her composure like scattered threads. Tomorrow. She turned toward the door, her shoulders squared against invisible judgment. Behind her, the Duke remained motionless, the letter still clasped in his hand. Only when she reached the threshold did his voice follow her, low and resonant in the gathering dusk. You need not face them alone, Lady Seraine. She paused, fragility and strength warring within her slender frame. Without turning, she replied simply, Thank you, your grace, before continuing into the corridor where Lady Emmeline awaited, resplendent in evening finery and predatory curiosity. The letter remained behind, its cruel summons laid bare upon the delicate table, where moments before they had shared an understanding beyond words. Through the window, rain fell more heavily now, obscuring the garden's tangled paths and washing away the boundaries between duty and desire, between what must be done and what might yet be possible. Dawn arrived with mercurial temperament, alternating between slanting sunlight and sudden showers, as Seraine prepared for her journey to Northfell. She dressed with particular care, selecting a gown of deep burgundy, somber enough for a sick room yet possessing a quiet dignity her mother would recognize and resent. At her throat, she fastened a modest cameo brooch, the only jewelry she had brought from her former life. The carriage awaits, my lady, Nell announced, hovering anxiously at the threshold. Mr. Thorne sent word that his grace requests your presence in the study before departure. Thank you, Nell, Seraine replied, securing the last pin in her chignon. The girl lingered, twisting her apron between slender fingers. Is there something else? It's just, Nell's voice faltered. The household. We've grown fond of your presence, my lady. The Duke himself seems less haunted since your arrival. We worry you might not return. Seraine's hands stilled upon her gloves. My place is here now, Nell. Whatever summons might come, I shall return by nightfall. The corridors of Thornfield seemed to watch her passage with melancholy awareness as she made her way to the study. The manor, for all its gloom and shadows, had become a sanctuary of sorts, a place where her deficiency was neither condemned nor constant topic of hushed conversation. Here she had found purpose in ledgers and correspondence, dignity in quiet routine. The study door stood ajar, morning light illuminating dust motes that danced like minuscule spirits in the air. Within, the Duke stood by the window, his tall frame silhouetted against the leaded glass. He turned at her entrance, his customary austerity softened by something resembling concern. "Lady Seraine," he acknowledged, gesturing toward a leather portfolio upon his desk. "I took the liberty of consulting my solicitor regarding your situation. These documents may prove useful should your family's demands exceed propriety." She approached the desk with measured steps, opening the portfolio to reveal several legal documents bearing the Thornfield seal. "Your intervention is unexpected, Your Grace." "Not intervention," he corrected. "Protection. Your family's summons rings of desperation and avarice, not filial concern." His gaze met hers directly. "I would not see you stripped of dignity alongside inheritance." "You barely know me," she observed, surprise evident in her voice. "I know enough." He reached for a wooden box upon the mantelpiece, removing a heavy signet ring. "This bears the Thornfield crest. Show it should any attempt to coerce your signature. My solicitor, Mr. Harwood, resides in Northfell and will come immediately if called upon." Seraine accepted the ring, its weight substantial against her palm. Such generosity suggests a depth of concern beyond mere employer and companion. The Duke's expression remained inscrutable, though something flickered in the storm-grey depths of his eyes. "Consider it repayment for restoring order to my chaotic household. Thornfield functioned as a cemetery before your arrival, a monument to what was lost rather than what remains." Their hands met briefly as she closed her fingers around the ring, the contact sending an unexpected warmth through her veins. For a moment neither spoke, the silence between them charged with unacknowledged recognition. "Lady Seraine," he finally said, his voice lowered to near whisper, "should circumstances at Northfell prove untenable, you need only send word. I shall come personally." She looked up, startled by the intensity of his gaze. "Your Grace." "Edric," he interrupted, "when we speak as equals rather than titles, I am simply Edric." "Then I am Seraine," she replied, her voice scarcely audible. "Not my lady or Miss Vale or the Barren daughter, but Seraine." He nodded once, the gesture somehow more profound than any elaborate courtesy. "Safe journey, Seraine. Return to Thornfield before nightfall. Some shadows are best not faced alone." The carriage journey to Northfell passed in contemplative silence, the countryside transitioning from Thornfield's wild woodland to the manicured precision of Vale lands. With each turning of the wheels, Seraine felt herself regressing, from independent woman of purpose back to the discarded daughter, the family embarrassment. Vale Manor appeared through parting mist, its stone facade pristine and cold as memory. Servants awaited her arrival, their expressions carefully neutral as they escorted her into the entrance hall, where once she had stood in exile's shadow. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt smaller, more confined, as if the house itself had contracted in her absence. "Lady Seraine," the butler intoned, his voice precisely as she remembered. "Lady Vale awaits in the morning room. Lord Vale's condition remains unchanged." The morning room, with its precisely arranged furniture and immaculate surfaces, stood as testament to Lady Marwyn's rigid standards. Her mother sat by the window, spine straight as a blade, fingers methodically plying embroidery silk through stretched linen. She did not look up at Seraine's entrance. "You've arrived at last," Lady Marwyn observed, her needle flashing in cold sunlight. "I expected greater haste when summoned to your father's potential deathbed." Seraine removed her gloves with deliberate calm. "The messenger reached Thornfield only yesterday afternoon, Mother. I departed at first light." "Thornfield?" Lady Marwyn repeated, the name a subtle condemnation upon her lips. "A position far beneath your breeding, despite your limitations. The Duke's reputation as a recluse is well established. I trust he treats you with appropriate distance." "His Grace has shown me nothing but respect and consideration," Seraine replied, taking the seat opposite without invitation. "More than I received in my former home." Lady Marwyn's needle paused mid-stitch, her green eyes finally rising to assess her daughter. "Impertinence does not become you, Seraine, particularly when your father's health hangs in precarious balance. Forgive me if I question the sincerity of your concern, given the documents I am summoned to sign." Seraine met her mother's gaze without flinching. "Tell me, Does father even know I've been called home? Your father's awareness is limited by laudanum and fever, Lady Marwen replied, resuming her needlework with practiced precision. The physician offers little hope of recovery. As such, certain arrangements must be made to protect the estate. From me? Seraine asked, incredulity coloring her voice. Her daughter you've already disowned and dismissed. Lady Marwen set aside her embroidery with a sigh that suggested infinite patience tested beyond endurance. From legal complications, Seraine, your cousin Edmund stands to inherit should your father pass, but certain entanglements could arise without formal renunciation of your claims. The solicitor awaits in the library with the necessary documents. And if I refuse, then the modest allowance that maintains your dignity at Thornfield shall cease immediately, Lady Marwen answered, her tone matter-of-fact rather than threatening. The choice, as always, remains yours. Seraine's fingers closed around the Duke's signet ring, concealed within the folds of her dress. I should like to see father before any documents are signed. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Lady Marwen's composed features. He is greatly altered, Seraine. The fever has ravaged both body and mind. It would serve neither of you to witness such decline. Nevertheless, I insist, Seraine replied, rising from her chair with newfound determination. As daughter of this house, however unwelcome, I claim that right. Their gazes locked in silent confrontation, years of unspoken resentment crackling between them like static before a storm. Finally, Lady Marwen nodded curtly. Very well. Mrs. Hargrove will accompany you to the sick room. 10 minutes, no more. The physician was most insistent about limited disturbances. The master's chambers occupied the manor's eastern wing, a realm Seraine had seldom entered even as a child. Heavy drapes shrouded the windows, casting the spacious room in sepulchral dimness broken only by a single bedside lamp. There, amidst pillows and linens, lay Lord Vale, once imposing patriarch, now diminished to skeletal fragility. Father, Seraine whispered, approaching the bedside with cautious steps. His eyelids fluttered, revealing fever-bright eyes that struggled to focus upon her face. Catherine, he murmured, voice cracked and distant. Is it you? Returned at last? Seraine froze, recognizing her mother's given name. No, father. It's Seraine, your daughter. Daughter, he repeated, the word emerging like a forgotten melody. My little songbird. They told me, they said you were gone, that you could not. Hush now, she soothed, gathering his withered hand between her own. I am here. Rest and recover your strength. His fingers clutched hers with surprising vigor. The papers, he rasped, agitation creasing his brow. Your mother, the solicitor. You must not sign. Promise me, Catherine. Promise me you will protect our songbird. Understanding dawned like cold sunlight. In his delirium, Lord Vale had confused past and present, mistaking daughter for mother. More critically, he appeared unaware of, perhaps even opposed to, the renunciation Lady Marwen had orchestrated. I promise, Seraine whispered, squeezing his hand gently. Rest now. All shall be well. She departed the sick room with measured steps, mind racing beneath a carefully composed expression. In the corridor, Mrs. Hargrove waited with professional concern. Did his lordship recognize you, my lady? Not entirely, Seraine answered truthfully. The fever has indeed affected his faculties. A pity, the housekeeper replied, leading her toward the staircase. Lady Vale awaits you in the library with Mr. Simmons. The documents require immediate attention, I understand. The library, once her childhood sanctuary, now felt like a tribunal chamber. Lady Marwen stood by the massive desk, the family solicitor seated before a neat arrangement of legal papers. His expression, professional yet triumphant, suggested a trap well laid and sprung. Lady Seraine, he greeted, rising with obsequious deference. My sincere condolences regarding Lord Vale's condition. These unfortunate circumstances necessitate certain legal precautions, as your esteemed mother has no doubt explained. Seraine approached the desk, noting the multiple documents awaiting her signature. My father seems unaware of these arrangements, Mr. Simmons. Indeed, he explicitly mentioned not signing any papers presented. The solicitor's smile tightened fractionally. His lordship's fever-induced confusion is precisely why these measures are necessary, my lady, to protect the estate during his incapacitation. I see. Seraine retrieved the Duke's signet ring from her pocket, setting it deliberately upon the desk. Then I believe we require a second opinion. Please send for Mr. Harwood immediately. Lady Marwen's eyes narrowed at the sight of the Thornfield crest. What is the meaning of this, Seraine? Who is Mr. Harwood? "The Duke of Thornfield's solicitor," she replied calmly. "His Grace anticipated such complications and offered legal counsel." The room fell silent save for the ticking of the mantel clock. Lady Marwyn and Mr. Simmons exchanged glances, fraught with unspoken calculation. "How very considerate of His Grace," Lady Marwyn finally responded, her voice brittle as thin ice. One wonders at such personal interest in a mere companion's affairs. Before Seraine could respond, the library door opened to admit a flustered footman. "Begging your pardon, my lady, but there's a gentleman arrived, the Duke of Thornfield himself, requesting immediate audience with Lady Seraine." Outside, carriage wheels crunched on gravel with decisive finality. Through the library window, Seraine glimpsed Eadric's tall figure descending to the drive, his expression grave and determined as storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The Vale Manor Library, once a sanctuary of childhood reading and rainy day explorations, had transformed into an arena of silent warfare. Lady Marwyn's glacial composure fractured momentarily at the footman's announcement, her fingers whitening around the embroidered handkerchief clutched in her palm. "The Duke of Thornfield," she repeated, disbelief colouring each syllable. "Requesting audience with my daughter?" "With Lady Seraine, yes, my lady," the footman confirmed, his gaze carefully averted from the palpable tension permeating the air. "He awaits in the receiving room and expressed particular urgency." Mr. Simmons cleared his throat with lawyerly precision. "Perhaps these documents should be attended to before receiving visitors, Lady Vale. His lordship's condition grows more precarious by the hour." "Indeed," Lady Marwyn agreed, composure reinstated like a carefully arranged mask. "Seraine, whatever arrangement exists between yourself and the Duke must wait until family matters are resolved. The papers require immediate signature." Seraine's posture remained unwavering, the Duke's signet ring still prominently displayed upon the polished desk surface. "I believe His Grace's arrival suggests these are no longer merely family matters, Mother, and I shall sign nothing without proper legal counsel." Lady Marwyn's gaze hardened to emerald flint. "You forget yourself, daughter. This house and all within it remain under my authority, while your father lies incapacitated. You shall do as instructed, or face consequences beyond mere financial disinheritance. What further punishment remains, Mother? You have already stripped me of name, home, and dignity. You have labelled me defective and cast me into exile." Seraine's voice remained steady, though her heart thundered against her ribs. "I am no longer the frightened daughter who departed in shame. I have found purpose beyond the narrow confines of matrimony and motherhood." The library door opened once more, admitting Eadric without announcement, his commanding presence immediately dominating the chamber despite the lack of ceremony. He wore riding clothes rather than formal attire, suggesting haste rather than planned visitation, yet his bearing remained unmistakably aristocratic. "Lady Vale," he acknowledged with minimal courtesy before turning to Seraine, his gaze softening imperceptibly. "Lady Seraine, forgive the intrusion. Certain intelligence reached Thornfield after your departure that necessitated immediate intervention." Lady Marwyn's spine stiffened further, if such were possible. "Your Grace, this unexpected arrival interrupts a private family matter of considerable delicacy. Perhaps you might call at a more appropriate time." "I think not," Eadric replied, his tone courteous yet unyielding as he approached the desk. His glance fell upon the scattered documents, then to his signet ring, before returning to Seraine's face with unmistakable concern. "I see my suspicions were well-founded. Lady Seraine, has any document been signed?" "None, Your Grace," she answered, relief evident in her voice, though considerable pressure has been applied. Mr. Simmons rose with nervous deference, bowing repeatedly as he gathered the papers into disorderly stacks. "A simple family arrangement, Your Grace, ensuring orderly succession during Lord Vale's unfortunate incapacitation. Nothing that requires external intervention, I assure you." "Indeed." Eadric retrieved a folded document from his coat pocket. "Then perhaps you might explain this letter, received at Thornfield scarcely an hour after Lady Seraine's departure. It bears Lord Vale's signature and yesterday's date, yet purports to authorize the very renunciation you now press upon his daughter. A curious feat for a man your footman described as delirious with fever these past 3 days." Seraine gasped softly, extending her hand for the letter. The signature, ostensibly her father's, showed unmistakable deviation from his familiar, forceful hand, a weak approximation at best, possibly traced or guided by another's hand. "A forgery," she whispered, looking up to meet her mother's gaze. Lady Marwyn's complexion paled to alabaster, though her expression remained rigidly controlled. An outrageous accusation, Your Grace. The document merely confirms verbal instructions Lord Vale provided before fever clouded his faculties. Then you will have no objection to my solicitor, Mr. Harwood, examining all documents before Lady Seraine's signature is requested, Edric replied, his tone suggesting this was statement rather than question. He awaits in my carriage and brings considerable expertise regarding inheritance law. The air between Lady Marwen and the Duke crackled with unspoken hostility. Mr. Simmons shifted uncomfortably, papers clutched protectively against his waistcoat, eyes darting between the adversaries like a trapped creature seeking escape. This intervention is most improper, Your Grace, Lady Marwen finally pronounced, each word precisely measured. One wonders at such personal interest in a mere household employee. Perhaps your concern extends beyond professional boundaries. Adric's expression hardened to granite, though his voice remained controlled. My concern, Lady Vale, extends to justice and propriety, qualities apparently diminished in this household. Lady Seraine's position at Thornfield is one of respect and value, concepts evidently foreign to those who would cast aside a daughter for circumstances beyond her control. You know nothing of our circumstances, Lady Marwen hissed, composure finally fracturing. Nothing of what her condition means for a lineage 8 centuries unbroken. Nothing of duty or legacy or obligation. I know everything of legacy and its cost, he countered, stepping closer to Seraine in unmistakable alliance. I buried my son, my only heir, alongside his mother. The Thornfield line ends with me, by cruel fate rather than choice. Yet I would sooner see my title extinct than perpetuate it through manipulation and cruelty. Silence descended, heavy and charged as air before lightning strikes. Seraine stood motionless between these opposing forces, maternal rejection and unexpected championship, her heart divided between lifelong conditioning to obedience and newfound courage to defy. The mantel clock chimed 3, its resonant tones echoing through the strained atmosphere. Outside rain began falling in earnest, droplets streaming down leaded windows like silent tears. I wish to see these documents examined properly, Seraine finally declared, gathering her resolve like scattered fragments of armor. And I wish to understand precisely what claims I am being asked to surrender. Lady Marwen's lips compressed to a bloodless line. You would trust this stranger above your own blood? This man who clearly harbors improper designs upon your compromised position? The Duke has shown me nothing but respect and consideration, Seraine replied evenly. More than I received from those who should have cherished me regardless of my physical limitations. How touching, Lady Marwen sneered, abandoning pretense of maternal concern. Tell me, Your Grace, does Lady Seraine know the full circumstances of your wife's passing? Of the rumors that followed? Perhaps your interest in Barren companions stems from particular requirements. Adric's expression darkened dangerously, though his voice remained controlled. Character assassination ill becomes you, Lady Vale. I suggest we confine our discussion to the matter at hand, the attempted coercion of your daughter into surrendering birthrights while her father lies incapacitated. The confrontation might have escalated further had not the library door burst open once more, admitting Mrs. Hargrove in a state of evident distress, cap askew and hands trembling. My lady, she gasped, addressing Lady Marwen with desperate urgency. His lordship, the physician says you must come immediately. The crisis has arrived. Lady Marwen's expression shifted from cold fury to genuine alarm. Without further word, she swept from the library, skirts rustling against furniture as she hastened toward the staircase, Mrs. Hargrove following in agitated pursuit. Mr. Simmons hesitated, documents still clutched protectively against his chest, caught between professional obligation and the dramatic interruption. Perhaps these matters might be postponed, he suggested weakly, edging toward the door. Given the circumstances, the documents remain here, Adric commanded, his tone brooking no opposition, to be examined at leisure once Lord Vale's condition stabilizes. The solicitor's protest died unspoken beneath the Duke's unyielding gaze. With reluctant deference, he returned the papers to the desk before retreating from the library with minimal dignity intact. Alone at last, Seraine released a shuddering breath, tension draining from her shoulders like water from cupped palms. Adric moved to her side, concern evident in his usually impassive features. Are you well? He inquired, his voice gentled from its earlier steel. I hardly know, she confessed, sinking into the nearest chair. Everything happens with such bewildering swiftness. My father's illness, these documents, your arrival. She looked up, meeting his gaze directly. "How did you know to come?" He seated himself opposite, close enough for private conversation, yet maintaining proper distance. "The messenger who delivered your mother's summons lingered at Thornfield's tavern, boasting of his errand. My groom overheard mention of documents prepared before Lord Vale's collapse, intended to disinherit the Barren daughter permanently. Given your mother's evident hostility, I feared coercion. You rode here personally rather than sending your solicitor," she observed. "Why?" Something shifted in his storm-grey eyes, vulnerability briefly visible beneath his customary reserve. "Because you have brought life back to Thornfield, Lady Seraine. Because your presence has awakened something I believed long buried beneath grief and obligation. Because I would not see you diminished by those who cannot recognize your worth beyond mere biological function." His words hung between them, neither declaration nor mere courtesy, but something more profound, recognition of kindred spirits, perhaps, or acknowledgement of possibility where none had seemed to exist. Before Seraine could formulate response, hurried footsteps sounded in the corridor. The door opened to admit a white-faced footman. "My lady," he announced, voice trembling with emotion, "I regret to inform you that Lord Vale has passed into God's keeping. The physician requests your presence upstairs immediately." Seraine rose unsteadily, shock rendering her momentarily speechless. Despite their estrangement, despite his participation in her exile, Lord Vale remained her father, the man who had once carried her upon his shoulders through autumn woodlands, who had taught her chess before propriety decreed such pastimes unladylike. "I shall accompany you," Adric offered quietly, rising beside her. "If you wish it." She nodded, gratitude overwhelming words as they proceeded from the library toward the staircase where, just weeks earlier, she had descended into exile and shame. Now she climbed those same steps toward orphanhood and uncertainty, each tread bringing her closer to a future suddenly unmoored from even the cruelest expectations. Lady Marwen stood outside the master's chambers, her composure fractured beyond repair, tears streaming unchecked down alabaster cheeks. She did not acknowledge Seraine's approach, her gaze fixed upon some invisible horizon beyond the manor walls. "He asked for you," she whispered, voice hollow with disbelief. "At the end, he called your name, not mine." His last coherent words. Seraine hesitated, torn between lifetime habit of obedience and newfound determination to forge her own path. Beside her, Eadric's steady presence offered silent strength. "I would see him," she said finally, "to say farewell properly." Lady Marwen stepped aside without protest, her formidable will seemingly shattered by grief or revelation or both. Within the chamber, Lord Vale lay in terrible stillness, the ravages of fever smoothed by death's final mercy. The physician stood respectfully aside as Seraine approached the bedside. "He went peacefully," he offered, professional compassion evident in his tone, and lucid at the last moment. "He spoke your name quite clearly, my lady." Seraine knelt beside the bed, taking her father's still warm hand between her own. "Goodbye, father," she whispered, grief finally breaching carefully constructed defenses. "I hope you found peace at the last." Behind her, Adric maintained respectful distance, yet his presence offered silent support more eloquent than any spoken comfort. In death's solemn chamber, amid grief's heavy silence, something unspoken yet profound passed between them. Not romance or passion, but recognition of shared understanding, of possibility beyond sorrow's shadow. Death creates its own immediacies, its own requirements. The household sprang into well-rehearsed rituals of mourning, crepe appearing upon doors, mirrors shrouded, clocks stopped at the moment of passing. Seraine found herself swept into these observances, temporarily restored to daughterly status by propriety's demands. As evening shadows lengthened across Vale Manor's manicured grounds, she found momentary solitude in the small conservatory, where childhood hours had passed in botanical explorations. Here, surrounded by her father's prized orchids, she permitted herself the luxury of unobserved grief, not merely for his passing, but for all that might have been had understanding triumphed over judgment. The conservatory door opened softly, admitting Adric's tall figure silhouetted against twilight's gathering gloom. He approached with quiet deference, respecting grief's sacred territory. "The household prepares for night vigil," he informed her gently. "Your mother has retired to her chambers under sedation. Mr. Harwood has secured the documents for proper examination tomorrow." Seraine nodded, grateful for practical matters that anchored grief's formless tide. "Thank you for coming today. Your intervention prevented—" She faltered, unable to articulate the full scope of what might have transpired without his timely arrival. "No gratitude is necessary," he replied, his gaze resting upon her with uncharacteristic tenderness. "I shall remain at the village inn until matters are settled, should you require further assistance. You would stay, with Thornfield requiring your attention?" The ghost of a smile touched his austere features. "Thornfield has survived my absence before. Besides, Mr. Thorn proves remarkably capable when necessity demands." A moment of silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than strained. Outside, rain continued its gentle percussion against glass panes, nature's quiet requiem for the day's momentous transitions. "What happens now?" Seraine finally asked, the question encompassing far more than immediate funeral arrangements. Adric considered her query with characteristic thoroughness. "Now propriety demands mourning observances. Legal matters shall require attention once appropriate time has passed. As for other considerations—" He paused, something vulnerable flickering beneath his reserved exterior. "Those must wait upon grief's proper season." Understanding passed between them, unspoken yet profound. Whatever connection had begun forming between exile's daughter and grief's widower required time and space to develop naturally, free from death's immediate shadow. "Will you return to Thornfield tomorrow?" he inquired, his tone carefully neutral. "No," she replied softly. "Whatever estrangement existed between us, he was my father. I shall observe proper mourning here, at least until the funeral." Adric nodded, respect evident in his expression. "Then I shall call tomorrow to ensure all proceeds appropriately. Rest now, Seraine. Tomorrow brings its own demands." He turned to depart, his tall figure casting long shadows across polished floorboards. At the threshold, he paused, looking back with unexpected vulnerability in his usually guarded countenance. "When grief permits," he said quietly, "know that Thornfield awaits your return, not merely as companion or secretary, but as—" He hesitated, words seemingly insufficient for the sentiment he wished to convey. "As valued presence," he concluded finally, "as one whose absence would render the house diminished beyond reckoning." With that declaration, neither love's profession nor mere courtesy, but something equally profound, he departed, leaving Seraine surrounded by her father's treasured orchids and the whispered possibility of future blooming beyond sorrow's necessary season. A fortnight of prescribed mourning transformed Vale Manor into a mausoleum of black crepe and hushed voices. Seraine moved through these rituals like a sleepwalker, accepting condolences from neighbors who had shunned her after the physician's pronouncement, enduring Lady Marwen's grief that manifested as bitter recrimination rather than shared sorrow. The funeral proceeded with all propriety wealth could purchase: somber hymns, dignified sermon, measured tears behind black veils. Lord Vale was laid to rest in the family crypt beneath marble angels and Latin inscriptions that spoke of legacy and lineage, concepts that had driven father and daughter apart in life's final chapter. Throughout these observances, Adric maintained respectful distance while remaining steadfastly present. He attended the funeral alongside other county notables, his tall figure commanding attention, despite deliberate restraint. Daily he called at Vale Manor to ensure proceedings advanced appropriately, his concern evident yet never intrusive. On this particular afternoon, 2 weeks after Lord Vale's interment, Seraine sat in the morning room reviewing household accounts, a task Lady Marwen had relinquished without comment, retreating into widowhood's privilege of limited responsibility. Mr. Harwood, Adric's solicitor, was expected momentarily to discuss inheritance matters finally deemed appropriate for consideration. "Lady Seraine," the butler announced from the doorway, "His Grace the Duke of Thornfield and Mr. Harwood request audience." She set aside the ledger, straightening her mourning dress of matte black bombazine. "Please show them in, Fletcher." Adric entered first, formal mourning attire emphasizing his aristocratic bearing. Something in his expression, anticipation carefully controlled, suggested news of significance. Mr. Harwood followed, leather portfolio clutched beneath his arm, spectacles gleaming with professional satisfaction. "Lady Seraine," Adric greeted her, the formality of his address belied by warmth underlying each syllable. "I trust we find you well today." "As well as circumstances permit, Your Grace," she replied, gesturing toward chairs arranged before the fireplace. "I understand, Mr. Harwood brings news regarding my father's estate." The solicitor settled himself with deliberate precision, arranging papers upon his lap with methodical care. "Indeed, my lady. After extensive examination of Lord Vale's testamentary documents and previous legal instruments, I've uncovered matters of considerable significance to your position." Lady Marwen entered without announcement, her widow's weeds rustling like whispered secrets, as she claimed the furthest chair, spine rigid with habitual disapproval. "I assume I am included in these discussions, Mr. Harwood, as Lord Vale's widow and executrix?" "Of course, Lady Vale," the solicitor acknowledged with professional courtesy. "Your presence is most appropriate given the nature of my discoveries." Seraine observed her mother's tightly controlled expression, noting the anxiety lurking beneath practiced composure. Whatever Mr. Harwood had uncovered, Lady Marwen apparently anticipated and feared its revelation. "Please proceed," Seraine requested, folding her hands calmly upon her lap. Mr. Harwood adjusted his spectacles with scholarly precision. "Upon reviewing Lord Vale's papers, I discovered a previously undisclosed codicil to his will, properly witnessed and executed approximately 3 years ago. This document specifically addresses Lady Seraine's inheritance rights, apparently composed shortly after medical consultation regarding her specific circumstances." Lady Marwen's fingers whitened around her handkerchief. "Impossible. My husband shared all legal matters with me without exception." "Evidently not all, madam," the solicitor replied with gentle correction. "The codicil was held in private trust with Lord Vale's former solicitor, Mr. Chambers, with explicit instructions that it remain sealed until after his lordship's passing. He withdrew a document bearing Lord Vale's unmistakable seal, not the forged approximation Seraine had witnessed earlier, but the bold, decisive impression she remembered from childhood correspondence. The document's contents are quite straightforward," Mr. Harwood continued, unfolding crisp parchment with reverent care. "Lord Vale establishes a separate trust for Lady Seraine, comprising approximately 1/3 of the estate's value, including the dower house and surrounding lands, plus investments generating annual income of substantial proportion." Seraine gasped softly, disbelief momentarily overwhelming composure. "But why would father make such provision after learning of my condition, after permitting my effective banishment?" Adric leaned forward slightly, his gaze resting upon her with gentle understanding. "Perhaps, Lady Seraine, public acquiescence and private conscience sometimes follow different paths." "This is preposterous," Lady Marwen interrupted, colour flooding her previously pale cheeks. "Clearly a forgery or coercion. Lord Vale would never countermand our mutual decision regarding Seraine's position." Mr. Harwood's expression remained professionally neutral, despite the accusation. "The document bears every hallmark of authenticity, Lady Vale. Mr. Chambers confirms both its provenance and Lord Vale's explicit instructions that it remain confidential until after his passing, particularly from yourself." Silence descended, broken only by the mantel clock's steady rhythm measuring moments between revelation and response. Outside, afternoon sunlight illuminated the garden, where generations of Vales had walked in privileged certainty, a certainty now fractured by posthumous revelation. "There is more," Mr. Harwood continued, retrieving a sealed letter from his portfolio. "Lord Vale left this in Mr. Chambers' keeping, to be delivered to Lady Seraine personally upon disclosure of the codicil." He extended the letter, heavy cream paper bearing Lord Vale's personal seal rather than the family crest, suggesting private sentiment rather than official communication. Seraine accepted it with trembling fingers, turning it slowly in the sunlight, as if its exterior might reveal contents without breaking sacred seals. "I suggest we allow Lady Seraine privacy for this correspondence," Adric proposed, rising from his chair with decisive courtesy. "Perhaps the garden might provide suitable sanctuary." Gratitude washed through Seraine at his intuitive understanding of her need for solitude with this final paternal communication. She nodded, gathering her skirts as she rose. "Mr. Harwood, please remain to answer any further questions Lady Vale might pose," Adric instructed, his authoritative tone brooking no opposition. "Lady Seraine, might I escort you to the garden gate? I believe I saw particularly fine roses blooming near the south wall." They departed together, leaving Lady Marwen with protests unvoiced and the solicitor with diplomatic explanations prepared. The garden welcomed them with late summer abundance, formal beds presenting regimented beauty beneath cloudless skies. At the wrought iron gate separating cultivated gardens from wilder woodland beyond, Adric paused. "I shall await you here," he offered, understanding evident in his usually inscrutable expression. "Take whatever time this moment requires." Seraine continued alone along familiar paths until reaching the stone bench beneath ancient oak branches, where childhood hours had passed in daydreams and forbidden novels. Here, surrounded by dappled sunlight and memory's whispered chorus, she finally broke the seal upon her father's final communication. The handwriting struck her first, Not the bold, commanding script of official documents, but softer, less certain strokes suggesting vulnerability rarely displayed in life. My dear Seraine, if you read these words, I have passed beyond opportunity for spoken reconciliation, a cowardice for which I beg forgiveness. The distance between us, physical and emotional, stands among my life's most grievous failures. When the physician delivered his verdict regarding your condition, your mother declared it divine punishment for some ancestral transgression. I, weakened by convention and cowardice, permitted her judgment to overwhelm paternal love that should have proved unconditional. Yet conscience, once abandoned, returns with redoubled vigor in quiet moments. Though I lacked courage to oppose your mother openly, I made private provision for your future, ensuring independence beyond the vagaries of charity or companion's position. The trust established provides modest wealth, but significant freedom, to live as you choose, whether in spinsterhood's independence or marriage, based upon affection rather than necessity. The dower house stands ready whenever you might wish to claim it. I observed your departure from these grounds with shameful relief that difficult matters had resolved themselves without confrontation. Only after your carriage disappeared did I recognize the magnitude of my failure, not as nobleman or landowner, but as father. Dearest child, know that your worth never depended upon ability to continue our bloodline. Your kindness, intelligence, and quiet dignity represent Vale qualities far exceeding mere biological continuation. If Providence allows, perhaps we might speak plainly before my passing. If not, accept these written words as poor substitute for conversations we should have shared in life's precious moments. With deepest affection and profound regret, your father's tears fell upon parchment, blurring ink but not sentiment as Seraine read and reread this final communication, neither complete absolution nor simple sentimentality, but honest acknowledgement of human failing and belated attempt at justice. Not perfect reconciliation, but perhaps the closest approximation mortality and courage permitted. Time passed unmeasured as she absorbed these revelations, grief and gratitude intermingling like complementary watercolors. Eventually, awareness of Aedric's patient vigil by the garden gate prompted her return along sunlit paths, letter carefully folded within her pocket, its weight both physical and metaphorical. He straightened upon seeing her approach, concern evident in his usually composed features. "Are you well, Seraine?" he inquired, formality temporarily abandoned in genuine solicitude. "I am," she replied, surprising herself with the truth of this simple declaration, not without grief or regret, but with greater peace than I anticipated possible. Understanding passed between them, requiring no elaborate explanation. He offered his arm with quiet courtesy, which she accepted with equal simplicity, as they returned toward the manor where decisions awaited regarding newfound circumstances. They found Lady Marwen alone in the morning room, Mr. Harwood having departed with promises to return with additional documentation. Her composure had fractured further during their absence, hands restlessly arranging and rearranging embroidery silks with nervous precision. "So?" she pronounced upon their entrance, bitterness evident beneath forced calm. "The Barren daughter returns triumphant, while the dutiful wife receives mere widow's portion." "Mother," Seraine began, fatigue coloring her tone, "this need not be adversarial. Father's provision changes nothing regarding your position here." "It changes everything," Lady Marwen countered, abandoning pretense entirely. "It contradicts every principle upon which this family operated for generations. It rewards deficiency and punishes conformity." Aedric stepped forward, his expression hardening. "With respect, Lady Vale, your daughter's physical condition represents neither moral failure nor divine punishment. Lord Vale's testament suggests he eventually recognized this truth, even if public acknowledgement proved beyond his courage. How convenient that you defend her so ardently, Your Grace," Lady Marwen replied, venom thinly disguised beneath aristocratic diction. "A childless duke finding common cause with barren nobility. One wonders whether Thornfield's empty nurseries might soon welcome a mistress equally empty of future promise." The insult hung in air, suddenly charged with dangerous potential. Seraine gasped softly, mortification overwhelming momentary speechlessness. Aedric's expression transformed to granite, though his voice remained controlled when he finally responded. "Your grief permits latitude that would otherwise demand satisfaction, Lady Vale. Nevertheless, I suggest you moderate both assumptions and expressions before irreparable damage ensues." Seraine moved between them, one hand lightly touching Aedric's sleeve in silent request for forbearance. "Mother, Regardless of your feelings toward me or the Duke, father's wishes deserve respect. I intend neither triumph nor revenge, merely quiet independence. Independence, Lady Marwyn repeated, the word twisted with scornful emphasis. Such noble sentiment from a woman clearly seeking advantageous alliance. Tell me, Seraine, when did the Duke's interest transform from employer to champion? Before or after learning of your potential inheritance? The accusation struck with calculated precision, targeting Seraine's most vulnerable uncertainty regarding Eadric's motivations. She stepped back involuntarily, doubt momentarily visible in her expression before dignity reasserted itself. Enough, Eadric commanded, his voice resonating with authority rarely displayed in her presence. Lady Vale, your insinuations dishonor both your daughter and yourself. Lady Seraine has demonstrated remarkable fortitude throughout circumstances designed to diminish her spirit. That strength, not financial consideration, commands respect from those capable of recognizing true worth. He turned to Seraine, his expression softening perceptibly. Lady Seraine, perhaps continued discussion might best await calmer temperament. My carriage remains at your disposal should you wish to depart this atmosphere. The offer hung between them, neither command nor mere courtesy, but genuine opportunity for escape from toxic recrimination. Seraine glanced toward her mother, seeking some indication that reconciliation remained possible, finding only cold rejection hardening features, once beloved and respected. I shall gather my belongings, she decided quietly. The dower house requires preparation before occupancy, and Thornfield's ledgers await completion. If you would be so kind, Your Grace, as to allow 30 minutes preparation. He nodded understanding, withdrawing to allow privacy for this final familial confrontation. When the door closed behind him, silence stretched between mother and daughter like unbridgeable chasm. You choose him then, Lady Marwyn finally stated, accusation rather than question. I choose myself, mother, Seraine corrected gently. For the first time in my life, father's provision permits existence beyond definition, as daughter, wife, or mother, beyond utility to bloodlines or family expectations. He will use you, Lady Marwyn predicted, bitterness coating each syllable. Warm his bed without risk of entanglement or obligation. When novelty fades, you shall discover true vulnerability of a woman without function. Seraine approached her mother slowly, maintaining dignity despite the cruel assessment. Is that what happened to you, mother? Did you discover your only value lay in producing heirs and maintaining appearances? Did father's love prove conditional upon performed duties rather than shared affection? Something flickered behind Lady Marwyn's icy composure, vulnerability or recognition, briefly visible before defensive barriers reinstated themselves. Sentiment is luxury afforded only those insulated from consequence, Seraine. Remember that when infatuation's warmth gives way to pragmatic assessment, perhaps, Seraine acknowledged, unexpected compassion replacing previous resentment, or perhaps true connection might exist beyond transaction and expectation. I intend to discover which proves accurate. She curtsied with formal respect before turning toward the door, pausing at threshold to glance back one final time. Goodbye, mother. The dower house stands open should you ever wish to visit, not as Lady Vale to Barren daughter, but as mother to child who never stopped hoping for your approval, despite evidence it would never arrive. 30 minutes later, Seraine descended Vale Manor's grand staircase for the second departure of her adult life. Unlike previous exile's shameful shadow, she walked with measured dignity, small valise containing essential belongings, the remainder to follow when emotions cooled sufficiently for practical arrangements. Eadric awaited in the entrance hall, his expression revealing genuine concern rather than mere politeness. Is all well? He inquired quietly, as servants proceeded with muted efficiency around them. As well as circumstances permit, she replied, honesty replacing social platitude. Though I confess uncertainty regarding immediate plans, the dower house requires significant preparation before habitation becomes practical. Thornfield awaits your return, he offered simply. Not as companion or secretary, but as honored guest while future arrangements coalesce. The carriage journey began in comfortable silence, Vale Manor receding behind them, like shore disappearing from shipboard perspective. Miles passed beneath iron-rimmed wheels, each revolution carrying Seraine further from past constraints toward uncertain future, a journey simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating in newfound independence. I owe you considerable gratitude, she finally observed as afternoon shadows lengthened across verdant countryside. Your intervention prevented potentially disastrous outcomes. Adric's gaze met hers directly, unusual vulnerability evident beneath customary reserve. No gratitude is necessary between equals, Seraine. Is that how you see us now? As equals. I have always seen you thus, he replied quietly. From your first day at Thornfield, when dignity remained intact despite circumstances designed to diminish, others defined you by absence, of fertility, of purpose, of value. I recognized presence instead, of courage, intelligence, and quiet strength. His words hung between them, neither declaration nor mere compliment, but recognition transcending conventional boundaries between employer and employee, between aristocrat and genteel dependent. Something profound yet fragile had begun forming between exiled daughter and grieving widower, connection founded upon mutual understanding rather than societal expectation. The carriage approached crossroads where decision became necessary, left toward Thornfield Manor, right toward the Vale Dower House with its emptiness and independence. Seraine hesitated, future's uncertainty suddenly overwhelming after lifetime navigating clearly defined expectations, however limiting. Thornfield first, I think, she finally decided, meeting Adric's gaze with newfound certainty, to complete outstanding ledgers and correspondence before establishing independence at the Dower House. He nodded, understanding, something like disappointment briefly shadowing his features before customary reserve reasserted itself. The carriage continued leftward, wheels turning toward Thornfield's shadowed walls and tangled gardens, where grief and possibility coexisted in fragile balance. As twilight descended upon the countryside, neither spoke further of emotions stirring beneath propriety's careful restraints. Yet something had shifted between them, possibility acknowledged, if not yet embraced, connection recognized, if not yet fully claimed. The manor's silhouette appeared against darkening sky, windows illuminated with welcoming warmth absent during Seraine's first arrival. Somewhere within those ancient walls, decision awaited, regarding whether restored fortunes necessitated departure or permitted deeper connection beyond initial circumstances that had brought exile's daughter to grief's dominion. The carriage wheels slowed as they approached Thornfield's gates, each revolution bringing Seraine closer to crossroads more significant than mere geography, the intersection of past, defined by limitation, and future offering possibility beyond conventional boundaries and expectations. Thornfield Manor greeted Seraine's return with unexpected warmth, as if the very stones recognized her significance. Servants appeared with quiet efficiency, Nell's delighted smile, Mrs. Winter's dignified approval, Mr. Thorne's formal bow concealing genuine pleasure. Even the ancient butler, Jenkins, emerged from his customary silence to welcome her with unprecedented verbosity. "The house has missed your presence, my lady," he pronounced, accepting her traveling cloak with ceremonial reverence. "As have we all." Adric observed these interactions with subtle satisfaction, his customary reserve softened by something resembling contentment. "I trust your chambers remain satisfactory," he inquired as they crossed the entrance hall. "Mrs. Winters has maintained them in anticipation of your return." "Maintained?" Seraine questioned, pausing at the foot of the grand staircase. "You expected my return with such certainty." A shadow of vulnerability crossed his austere features. "I hoped for it," he corrected quietly, though recent developments regarding your inheritance suggested diminished likelihood. Before she could respond, Lady Emmeline Blackwood's melodious voice echoed from the drawing room. "Adric, is that you returned at last? I've been positively perishing from boredom these past 3 days." Seraine's questioning glance prompted Adric's grimace of apology. "Lady Emmeline arrived yesterday, uninvited and unannounced. Apparently London's summer entertainments proved insufficient distraction from matchmaking aspirations." "How inconvenient for you," Seraine observed, unexpected jealousy tightening her chest despite rational dismissal of Lady Emmeline as genuine threat. "Inconvenient timing, perhaps," he murmured, his gaze meeting hers with unmistakable significance. "Given matters I had hoped to discuss privately upon your return." The drawing-room doors opened before further elaboration became possible, revealing Lady Emmeline resplendent in azure silk that complemented her golden curls and calculating blue eyes. Her assessment of Seraine's travel-worn appearance and modest valise contained equal measures of surprise and satisfaction. "Lady Seraine, what an unexpected pleasure," she exclaimed, insincerity thinly veiled beneath practiced cordiality. I understood you had departed permanently following some family difficulty. How delightful to discover my information mistaken. Not entirely mistaken, Seraine replied with measured calm. My father's passing necessitated temporary absence. I have returned to complete certain administrative matters before establishing residence elsewhere. Lady Emmeline's perfectly arched eyebrows rose with theatrical surprise. Elsewhere? But surely your position here is no longer one of employment, Adric interrupted, his tone brooking no contradiction. Lady Seraine returns as honored guest while determining future arrangements. Her father's will has provided independent means, including the Vale Dower House. This revelation visibly discomposed Lady Emmeline, whose rapid recalculation manifested as momentary speechlessness followed by renewed strategic assessment. How extraordinarily fortunate, she finally pronounced, though one wonders at such provision given certain circumstances. My father's conscience proved stronger than societal expectation, Seraine replied evenly, refusing to acknowledge the cruel insinuation regarding her barrenness. A quality I have discovered is rarer than anticipated. Dinner that evening proceeded with superficial pleasantries masking undercurrents of tension. Lady Emmeline dominated conversation with London gossip and theatrical anecdotes. Her sparkling repartee clearly intended to emphasize contrast between sophisticated worldliness and Seraine's quieter demeanor. You simply must visit London next season, Lady Seraine, she insisted, gesturing expansively with her dessert spoon. With independent means and proper introduction, even a lady of mature years might find suitable companionship among diplomatic circles or scholarly societies. My plans remain undetermined, Seraine replied, her composure unruffled by the deliberate reference to her age, though I confess rural tranquility holds greater appeal than metropolitan diversions. How charmingly provincial, Lady Emmeline laughed, turning toward Adric with conspiratorial intimacy. Though surely, cousin, you recognize the limitations of permanent rural seclusion. A man of your position requires occasional presence in society, particularly when considering future arrangements. Adric's expression remained impassive, though something dangerous flickered in his storm-grey eyes. My future arrangements, as you term them, remain my exclusive concern, Lady Emmeline. Neither society's expectations nor familial interference shall determine their nature. The subtle rebuke momentarily silenced Lady Emmeline's machinations, though calculation remained evident beneath her perfect composure. The remainder of the meal passed in mercifully neutral conversation until ladies withdrew, leaving Adric to traditional port and solitude. In the drawing-room, Lady Emmeline abandoned pretense entirely once servants departed. Your circumstances have certainly improved since our last encounter, she observed, rearranging silk skirts with deliberate precision. From companion to heiress in one convenient bereavement. How fortuitous. There was nothing fortuitous in my father's passing, Seraine replied, maintaining dignity despite provocation, nor in the estrangement preceding it. Yet here you are, Lady Emmeline continued, fingertips tracing delicate patterns upon damask upholstery, conveniently positioned between independence and vulnerability. One wonders which proves more attractive to a gentleman in Adric's position. Seraine turned from the window, where twilight shadows had claimed her attention. What precisely do you imply, Lady Emmeline? Merely that circumstances create fascinating possibilities, the other woman replied with feline satisfaction. A barren woman holds certain attractions for a widower haunted by past tragedy. All the companionship, none of the risk of repeating painful history. The cruel assessment hung between them, its calculated precision striking deeper than Seraine cared to acknowledge. Her own uncertainties regarding Adric's intentions, unspoken yet persistent, found unwelcome voice in Lady Emmeline's insinuations. You mistake the Duke's character entirely, she finally responded, concealing hurt beneath calm dignity. His consideration extends beyond calculating advantage or convenient arrangement. Does it? Lady Emmeline smiled with practiced sympathy. Men of consequence rarely act without purpose, Lady Seraine, particularly those scarred by experience. Consider carefully whether affection or expedience motivates apparent regard. Further confrontation was prevented by Adric's entrance, his expression suggesting awareness of tension despite absence during the exchange. His gaze moved between the women with perceptive assessment, lingering upon Seraine's carefully composed features. Lady Emmeline, you mentioned fatigue earlier, he observed with pointed courtesy. Perhaps retirement would prove beneficial after your journey's exertions. The dismissal, though politely phrased, remained unmistakable. Lady Emmeline rose with calculated grace, her smile revealing neither offence nor acquiescence. "How considerate, cousin, though I had hoped for extended conversation regarding certain family matters. Tomorrow will provide ample opportunity," he replied firmly. "Good night, Lady Emmeline." She departed with rustle of expensive silk and lingering fragrance, leaving momentary silence in her wake. Theodric crossed to the fireplace, his tall figure silhouetted against dancing flames that cast his features in stark relief. "I apologize for her presence," he said finally, turning towards Seraine with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "Had I anticipated your return today, I would have discovered urgent business requiring her immediate departure." "No apology is necessary," Seraine replied, attempting lightness despite lingering discomfort from Lady Emmeline's assessment. "She clearly holds long-standing affection for you." "She holds long-standing affection for Thornfield's title and fortune," he corrected dryly. "My person remains incidental to her aspirations." Silence settled between them, neither uncomfortable nor entirely companionable, a pause pregnant with unspoken possibilities and uncertainties. Through the window, stars emerged against indigo sky, eternal witnesses to human complications and temporary struggles. "You mentioned matters requiring discussion," Seraine finally observed, gathering courage beneath composed exterior. Before Lady Emmeline's interruption, Adric moved toward her with deliberate steps, stopping at respectful distance that nonetheless allowed greater intimacy than their usual interactions. "Indeed, though perhaps tonight proves unsuitable, given your journey's fatigue and recent confrontations." "I am neither fragile nor fearful of difficult conversations," she replied, meeting his gaze directly. "Recent months have cured any such tendencies permanently." Something resembling admiration flickered across his austere features. "Very well." He hesitated, uncharacteristic uncertainty replacing his usual decisive manner. "Your changed circumstances create both opportunity and potential complication, Lady Seraine. Your inheritance permits choices previously unavailable, including departure from Thornfield without financial concern." "Is that your wish?" she questioned softly, heart suspended between beats as she awaited his response. "That I should depart? It is precisely what I do not wish," he answered, vulnerability evident beneath careful control. "Yet, my wishes must not constrain your newfound freedom. The Vale Dower House offers independence I cannot rightfully discourage, however personally unwelcome its exercise might prove." Understanding dawned gradually. He feared her departure, yet refused to limit her choices through emotional manipulation or expressed preference. The realization warmed her heart, while simultaneously frustrating her desire for clear declaration. "What if independence proves compatible with connection?" she suggested carefully, navigating uncharted territory between proper reserve and honest communication. "What if the Dower House's ownership need not mandate immediate occupancy?" Hope kindled in his expression, quickly tempered by habitual caution. "Such arrangement would require definitive understanding regarding future expectations and present circumstances." "Then let us establish such understanding," Seraine replied, courage mounting with each word, "without Lady Emmeline's presence or interference." His lips curved in rare, genuine smile that transformed his severe countenance. "A practical suggestion. Perhaps tomorrow morning? The Rose Garden offers both privacy and pleasant surroundings for significant conversations." The moment held perfect balance between anticipation and restraint, between possibility acknowledged and propriety maintained. Neither moved to breach conventional distance, yet something profound passed between them, recognition of mutual regard transcending initial circumstances of their acquaintance. "Until tomorrow, then," Seraine agreed, her own smile reflecting quiet joy rather than mere politeness. "The Rose Garden at 10 o'clock. "I shall count the hours," he replied with surprising candor, before recollecting proper reserve. "Good night, Lady Seraine. May your dreams prove peaceful." He departed with formal bow belied by warmth in his usually guarded expression. Alone in the drawing room, Seraine allowed herself momentary indulgence in unrestrained hope, not merely for romantic resolution, but for connection transcending conventional expectations of what damaged vessels might offer one another. Outside, night deepened toward midnight, as ancient Thornfield settled into creaking slumber. Within its shadowed corridors and hidden chambers, possibility blossomed like rare hothouse flower, fragile yet resilient, unexpected yet inevitable. Sleep proved elusive despite physical exhaustion, her mind traversing and retraversing potential outcomes of tomorrow's conversation. Would he offer formal courtship, marriage of convenience, something less defined yet equally meaningful? Lady Emmeline's cruel assessment that Seraine's barrenness represented convenient attraction rather than impediment returned with unwelcome persistence, poisoning anticipation with doubt's bitter tincture. Dawn arrived with misty tenderness, golden light filtering through ancient trees surrounding Thornfield's grey stones. Seraine dressed with particular care, selecting lavender muslin that softened her features while maintaining appropriate morning-adjacent sobriety. Her reflection revealed neither girlish anticipation nor spinsterish resignation, but woman of mature years facing life's possibilities with earned wisdom. The breakfast room stood empty save for Mrs. Winters, who informed her that both the Duke and Lady Emmeline had ridden out at first light, the latter having received urgent correspondence necessitating immediate return to London, the former accompanying her to the mail coach as courtesy demanded. His Grace left particular message, the housekeeper added with unusual warmth. The Rose Garden appointment remains unchanged upon his return, expected before 10 o'clock. Relief mingled with disappointment. Relief at Lady Emmeline's departure, disappointment at delay in anticipated conversation. Seraine broke her fast with toast and tea, then retreated to the library where ledgers awaited attention after fortnight's neglect. Time passed in productive concentration until the mantel clock chimed 10:15, prompting anticipatory preparation for the garden rendezvous. Selecting a volume of poetry as pretense for solitary contemplation, she made her way through Thornfield's corridors toward the side entrance accessing formal gardens beyond. The rose garden presented autumnal splendor, late blooms offering final, fragrant glory before winter's inevitable dormancy. Stone benches positioned at strategic intervals provided comfortable observation points, while gravel paths crunched pleasantly underfoot, announcing approach or departure with reliable clarity. Seraine selected the furthest bench, partially secluded by climbing roses, whose crimson blossoms complemented falling leaves scattered across immaculate gravel. The poetry volume remained unopened upon her lap as minutes passed, anticipation gradually transforming to uncertainty as the mantel clock's distant chime announced 10 o'clock, then 15:15, with no sign of Eadric's return. Footsteps upon gravel finally alerted her to approaching presence, not the Duke's familiar stride, but lighter, hurried steps belonging to Nell, whose expression combined excitement and apprehension in equal measure. "My lady," she called, breathless from evident haste. "You must come quickly. The most extraordinary thing," she faltered, overwhelmed by whatever news she carried. "Calm yourself, Nell," Seraine instructed, setting aside her book as concern replaced anticipation. "What has occurred? Has the Duke returned?" "Yes, my lady, but that's not—" The girl twisted her apron between slender fingers. "It's just, there's a visitor arrived. A lady asking for you most particularly. She says—" Nell swallowed visibly. "She says she's your mother." The morning room, scene of countless polite interactions and meaningless social rituals, now contained tension so palpable it seemed to distort sunlight streaming through leaded windows. Lady Seraine Vale stood beside the marble fireplace, her widow's weeds emphasizing alabaster pallor and rigid posture. Eadric occupied position near the door, his expression suggesting interruption of intended departure. "Mother," Seraine acknowledged, composure masking tumultuous confusion as she entered. "This is unexpected." "Necessity often produces unexpected actions," Lady Seraine replied, her voice brittle as winter ice. "When one's daughter abandons familial responsibility without forwarding address, direct pursuit becomes unavoidable." Eadric stepped forward, his protective instinct visible beneath courteous restraint. "Lady Seraine departed Vale Manor with my full knowledge and support, Lady Vale. Any suggestion of impropriety or abandonment of duty is entirely misplaced." Lady Marwen's gaze swept dismissively over his tall figure before returning to Seraine with laser focus. "I require private conversation with my daughter, Your Grace. Family matters of considerable delicacy. Anything you wish to say may be spoken before the Duke," Seraine countered, instinctively moving closer to Eadric's supportive presence. "I keep no secrets from this household." Something resembling pain flickered briefly across Lady Marwen's carefully composed features. "Very well. If privacy cannot be maintained, perhaps honesty might suffice instead." She withdrew an envelope from her reticule, extending it with imperious gesture. "This arrived yesterday from London. Read it, then determine whether family loyalty retains any meaning in your transformed circumstances." Seraine accepted the envelope with measured calm despite internal trepidation. The paper, Expensive, cream-colored stationery bearing familiar aristocratic crest contained single sheet covered in elegant feminine handwriting. My dearest Lady Vale, society whispers reach London drawing rooms with remarkable velocity. News of your bereavement and subsequent familial realignment has prompted considerable speculation, particularly regarding Lady Seraine's altered circumstances and current residence at Thornfield Manor. While personal tragedy normally commands respectful silence, certain considerations of reputation compel this confidential communication. The Duke of Thornfield's history contains elements perhaps unknown to provincial circles, yet well documented among those with longer memories and wider connections. His first marriage, contracted with appropriate splendor and expectation, concluded under circumstances remarkable for both tragedy and peculiarity. The Duchess's passing during childbirth represents common enough misfortune, yet persistent questions regarding the Duke's behavior during her confinement and subsequent treatment of her memory suggest character worthy of deeper examination before further connection is entertained. His withdrawal from society, while attributed to grief, perhaps conceals recognition that certain doors would remain firmly closed regardless of title or fortune. His preference for companionship unlikely to result in offspring may represent practical adaptation rather than romantic inclination. I share these observations from sincere concern for Lady Seraine's welfare and reputation, having observed the Duke's particular attention during my recent visit to Thornfield. While improved circumstances may permit independent decision-making, information represents essential component of wise choices. With deepest sympathy for your loss and sincere wishes for future happiness, Lady Emmeline Blackwood Seraine's hands trembled slightly as she refolded the letter, its poisonous insinuations seeping through her consciousness like slow-acting venom. She turned toward Adric, finding his expression closed and unreadable, the warm anticipation of garden rendezvous replaced by defensive withdrawal. Lady Emmeline has interesting theories regarding your first marriage, she observed quietly, holding his gaze despite internal uncertainty, and particular opinions about your intentions toward me. Something dangerous flickered behind his composed exterior. Lady Emmeline nurtures numerous theories, most designed to achieve personal advantage rather than illuminate truth. Yet rumors seldom materialize from complete fabrication, Lady Marwyn interjected, watching their interaction with calculating assessment. London society rarely blacklists aristocracy without substantial cause. Society, Adric replied, his voice controlled despite evident anger, delights in simplistic narratives that explain complex circumstances without challenging comfortable assumptions. My withdrawal provided convenient confirmation of pre-existing suspicions, nothing more. Seraine maintained calm exterior despite emotional turbulence beneath. What actually happened, Adric, with your wife's death and your subsequent isolation? His gaze held hers with uncomfortable intensity, as if assessing whether truth might destroy fragile connection between them. Catherine suffered prolonged labor, he finally answered, each word measured and painful. The physician advised surgical intervention that might save the child while sacrificing the mother. As husband, the decision fell to me. Understanding dawned with terrible clarity. You chose her life over the heir's. I chose my wife over succession, he corrected quietly. Society, particularly Catherine's family, considered this unconscionable weakness. A duke's primary obligation lies with bloodline, not conjugal affection. My decision represented unforgivable prioritization of personal feeling above aristocratic duty. Yet both perished regardless, Lady Marwyn observed, her tone suggesting confirmation of suspected weakness. Both perished, Adric acknowledged, pain briefly visible beneath controlled exterior. Leaving me with neither wife nor heir, only judgment from those who claimed later intervention might have saved my son had maternal sacrifice been permitted earlier. Silence descended upon the morning room, weighted with revelation and unspoken assessment. Outside, clouds drifted across autumn sun, casting shifting shadows across polished floorboards and oriental carpets, mute witnesses to human tragedy and judgment's arbitrary cruelty. "And your interest in my daughter?" Lady Marwyn finally inquired, her voice surprisingly gentle despite the question's directness. "Does her barrenness represent convenient absence of potential repetition?" Seraine inhaled sharply at her mother's unprecedented cruelty, pain blooming beneath her ribs like sudden wound. Yet Lady Emmeline's letter had suggested precisely this calculation, that Adric's attention stemmed from practical avoidance of childbirth's dangers rather than genuine affection. My interest in Lady Seraine, Adric responded with dangerous quietness, stems from recognition of extraordinary character demonstrated through unconscionable circumstances. Her physical condition represents neither attraction nor impediment, merely irrelevant characteristic like eye color or height. He turned toward Seraine, vulnerability replacing defensive anger. I intended discussion of these matters in garden privacy rather than forced disclosure through malicious interference. Forgive me. Before Seraine could respond, Lady Marwen stepped forward, her expression softening to unfamiliar gentleness. Lady Emmeline's letter prompted my journey, yet represents merely catalyst rather than complete motivation. Seraine, she faltered, unpracticed in emotional honesty. I have reconsidered certain positions regarding your circumstances. Disbelief momentarily overwhelmed Seraine's composure. You who labeled me defective and arranged my exile? You who attempted disinheritance through forgery and manipulation? What miraculous transformation prompts this unexpected visitation? Your father's letter, Lady Marwen replied simply. The one Mr. Harwood delivered. He left copy for me as well. Understanding dawned gradually. Lord Vale's posthumous communication had apparently reached both wife and daughter, its contents affecting each differently, yet profoundly. His confession of cowardice struck uncomfortably familiar chord, Lady Marwen continued, uncharacteristic vulnerability replacing habitual rigidity, particularly his acknowledgement that convention overwhelmed paternal affection, as social expectation eclipsed maternal love in my own behavior. She moved toward Seraine with hesitant steps, uncertainty replacing customary confidence. I cannot undo damage inflicted through misguided adherence to ancestral expectations, but perhaps bridge building might begin, however belatedly. Seraine studied her mother's face, seeking deception or manipulation beneath apparent sincerity, finding neither, merely exhausted recognition of opportunities, forever lost through rigid conformity to external judgment. Bridge building requires mutual effort, she finally responded, neither accepting nor rejecting the unexpected overture, and recognition that previous structures collapse through deliberate action rather than unfortunate circumstance. Lady Marwen nodded, accepting the measured response as reasonable given their fractured history. I request neither forgiveness nor immediate reconciliation, merely opportunity for altered relationship moving forward. The dower house stands empty, requiring significant attention before winter. Perhaps practical cooperation might precede emotional reconnection. The proposal, pragmatic yet potentially meaningful, hung between them like tentative offering. Adric remained silent, his presence supportive yet unobtrusive as mother and daughter navigated uncharted territory between estrangement and reconciliation. I shall consider it, Seraine finally answered. Neither commitment nor rejection, but acknowledgement of possibility previously deemed impossible. Though current residence at Thornfield requires proper conclusion before new arrangements commence. Understanding passed between the three occupants of that sunlit room, recognition that multiple potential futures had materialized where previously only rigid certainty existed. Lady Marwen's unexpected olive branch, Aedric's revealed history, Seraine's newfound independence, each element creating constellation of possibility, requiring careful navigation. Perhaps luncheon might provide neutral ground for continued discussion, Adric suggested, practical consideration breaking momentary impasse. Mrs. Winters can arrange private dining room rather than formal setting. The suggestion, simple yet considerate, offered breathing space between emotional revelations and necessary decisions. Lady Marwen nodded acceptance, while Seraine moved toward the bell-pull momentary domestic arrangement, creating illusion of normalcy amid extraordinary circumstances. As servants responded to summons with efficient preparation, Seraine found herself standing beside library windows, overlooking Thornfield's autumnal gardens. The rose garden bench, where anticipated declaration should have occurred, remained visible in distance, empty now, yet representing possibility rather than lost opportunity. Aedric joined her, maintaining proper distance while conveying emotional proximity through quiet presence. I regret the manner of disclosure, he said softly, voice pitched for her ears alone. Lady Emmeline's interference and your mother's unexpected arrival created circumstances far removed from what I had intended. Truth remains truth regardless of delivery method, Seraine replied, her gaze remaining fixed upon gardens beyond glass barriers. Perhaps forced disclosure prevents comfortable evasions we might otherwise have maintained. His reflection in window glass revealed vulnerable uncertainty beneath aristocratic composure. Does Lady Emmeline's assessment affect your perception of my intentions? Do you believe your condition represents convenient attraction rather than irrelevant circumstance? Seraine turned from the window, meeting his gaze directly rather than through reflected approximation. I believe human motivation seldom conforms to simplistic assessment or convenient narrative. That complicated beings make choices based upon constellation of factors rather than single calculation. Hope kindled in his expression, tempered by persistent caution born from previous judgment and societal rejection. And our conversation? Does garden rendezvous maintain relevance despite altered circumstances? More than ever, she answered softly, truth replacing polite equivocation. Though perhaps location might shift from public garden to private library once current visitation concludes. His smile, rare, genuine expression of unguarded pleasure, transformed severe features with unexpected warmth. I shall count minutes rather than hours this time. Lady Marwyn's approach prevented further private exchange, though something fundamental had shifted between them. Honesty replacing careful maneuvering, direct communication supplanting polite circumlocution. Whatever conclusion their interrupted conversation might eventually reach, foundation now rested upon truth rather than convenient narrative or comfortable assumption. Luncheon proceeded with surprising civility, given preceding revelations and lingering tensions. Lady Marwyn demonstrated unexpected adaptability, discussing dower house renovations and practical arrangements without reference to previous estrangement or Seraine's uncertain future regarding Thornfield versus independent residence. As meal concluded, she rose with uncharacteristic diffidence. I have imposed upon your hospitality long enough, Your Grace. The mail coach returns through Thornfield Village at 3 o'clock, allowing sufficient time for return journey. You are welcome to overnight accommodation, Eadric offered with automatic courtesy, despite evident preference for private resolution with Seraine. The journey to Vale Manor requires considerable endurance when undertaken in single day. Thank you, but no, Lady Marwyn replied, unexpected perceptiveness suggesting recognition of interrupted courtship, requiring privacy for proper conclusion. I intrude upon matters requiring resolution without maternal presence or interference. The mail coach shall prove perfectly adequate. This acknowledgement, that personal happiness might take precedence over familial expectation or societal judgment, represented profound deviation from Lady Marwyn's previous rigid adherence to conventional propriety. Seraine observed her mother with newfound appreciation for capacity to evolve, however belatedly and imperfectly. I shall accompany you to the village, she offered. Unexpected generosity prompted by recognition of courage required for maternal vulnerability after lifetime of emotional fortress building. We might discuss dower house requirements during the journey. Lady Marwyn's expression revealed momentary surprise, followed by genuine gratitude. That would be most appropriate. Thank you, Seraine. Carriage was summoned, goodbyes exchanged with formal courtesy masking emotional complexity beneath. As wheels crunched along Thornfield's gravel drive, mother and daughter found themselves alone for first time since Lord Vale's deathbed, uncertain how to navigate conversation unbounded by immediate crisis or structured social ritual. He seems honourable, Lady Marwyn finally observed, breaking silence with unexpected directness. Despite complications surrounding his first marriage, he is, Seraine confirmed simply, neither elaborating nor defending, statement of perceived fact rather than emotional declaration. Lady Marwyn studied her daughter's profile with newfound attentiveness. You care for him, beyond gratitude for intervention or appreciation of position offered. I do. And his feelings? Are they similarly engaged? Seraine turned from carriage window, meeting her mother's gaze directly. I believe so, though formal declaration awaits interrupted conversation's completion. Lady Marwyn nodded thoughtfully, fingers absently tracing embroidered reticule upon her lap. Marriage to widowed duke offers certain advantages, regardless of emotional attachment. Security, position, protection from society's crueler judgments regarding unmarried women of certain age. I require neither security nor protection, Seraine reminded her quietly. Father's provision ensures independence regardless of matrimonial status. True, Lady Marwyn acknowledged, surprising candor replacing habitual manipulation, which makes potential connection matter of choice rather than necessity, purer foundation than most marriages commence upon, including my own. This unexpected revelation that Lady Marwen's own marriage had begun from practical arrangement rather than affection created momentary bridge across years of misunderstanding and emotional distance. Seraine studied her mother with newfound compassion, recognizing that rigid adherence to societal expectation perhaps represented learned survival strategy rather than innate cruelty. "Did you ever love father?" she asked softly, question previously unthinkable now possible within altered relationship dynamic. Beyond arranged match and appropriate alliance? Pain flickered across Lady Marwen's carefully composed features, not performance for strategic advantage but genuine emotional response. "Eventually," she answered with uncharacteristic honesty, though society provides little encouragement for affection beyond dutiful respect. By the time genuine attachment developed, patterns of interaction had solidified beyond easy amendment. The carriage approached Thornfield Village, picturesque cottages and modest shops announcing journey's conclusion and conversation's necessary termination. As horses slowed before the coaching inn where mail coach would soon arrive, Lady Marwen turned toward her daughter with unaccustomed vulnerability. "I wish," she began, then faltered, unfamiliar with expressing genuine emotion rather than strategic sentiment. "I wish circumstances had permitted greater understanding between us, Seraine. That rigid adherence to expectation had not overwhelmed maternal affection so completely. Perhaps understanding might yet develop," Seraine suggested carefully, neither promising complete reconciliation nor rejecting possibility of improved relationship. "The Dower House renovations offer practical framework for cautious reconnection." Lady Marwen nodded, accepting this measured response as appropriate given their fractured history. "I shall write with contractor recommendations and furnishing suggestions, if acceptable. The south parlour requires particular attention before winter dampness creates irreparable damage." This return to practical matters, comfortable territory compared to emotional vulnerability, created breathing space between profound revelations and necessary departure. The mail coach appeared around Village Corner, its arrival punctuating conversation with definitive conclusion. As Lady Marwen prepared to depart, she hesitated on coaching inn's threshold, turning back with uncharacteristic impulsiveness. "Be happy, Seraine," she said quietly, genuine maternal concern briefly visible beneath lifetime of rigid propriety. "Choose path that brings contentment rather than mere appropriate arrangement. Your father's posthumous provision offers that freedom at least." With that unprecedented blessing, neither controlling direction nor withholding approval, she entered the coaching inn, where journey away from Thornfield would shortly commence. Seraine remained beside the carriage, watching her mother's retreating figure with complex emotion, beyond simple categorization as resentment or forgiveness. The return journey to Thornfield passed in contemplative silence, afternoon shadows lengthening across autumn landscape as carriage wheels retraced familiar path. Opportunities and possibilities previously unimagined now required careful consideration. Reconciliation with estranged mother, independence at Dower House, potential declaration from Adric regarding feelings developing beyond employer and companion. Thornfield's silhouette appeared against darkening sky, windows illuminated with welcoming warmth that seemed to acknowledge her return as rightful homecoming rather than mere reappearance at place of employment. As carriage wheels slowed before main entrance, Seraine observed Adric's tall figure awaiting her arrival, his customary reserve softened by evident anticipation. The interrupted garden conversation awaited completion, truth replacing convenient narrative, genuine connection supplanting societal expectation. Whatever conclusion their discussion might reach, foundation now rested upon honest recognition rather than calculated advantage or practical arrangement. Twilight descended upon Thornfield's ancient stones as Seraine prepared to enter its shadowed hallways once more, not as exiled daughter or employed companion, but as woman of independent means, making conscious choice regarding future path and potential happiness beyond conventional boundaries or restrictive expectations. Spring arrived at Thornfield with gentle persistence, coaxing reluctant blossoms from winter's dormancy. The formal gardens, once neglected monuments to grief's paralysis, now flourished under renewed attention, roses climbing ancient walls, tulips standing sentinel along gravel paths, forget-me-nots carpeting shaded corners with delicate blue remembrance. Seraine stood at the library window, morning light illuminating the journal open before her. 6 months had passed since autumn's momentous revelations and life-altering decisions. 6 months of transformation, both external and internal. as new patterns replaced old certainties and fresh possibilities bloomed where once only rigid expectations had existed. The dower house renovation progressed with measured deliberation, its transformation from neglected property to potential sanctuary mirroring Seraine's own journey from exiled daughter to woman of independent means and choice. Lady Marwen's involvement, initially tentative, increasingly confident, created unexpected bridge across years of estrangement. Their relationship remained imperfect, marked by occasional misunderstanding and lingering hurt, yet substantial improvement from previous rejection and recrimination. Practical cooperation gradually yielded cautious emotional reconnection. Weekly correspondence evolved into fortnightly visits, conversations expanding beyond furnishings and structural repairs to cautious personal revelations. Lady Marwen shared stories of Seraine's infancy previously unmentioned. Seraine reciprocated with honest discussion of exile's emotional impact rather than polite evasion. Neither expected complete reconciliation or uncomplicated affection, yet both valued incremental progress toward relationship defined by mutual respect rather than obligation or resentment. The dower house stood ready for occupation by summer's arrival, not escape from Thornfield but additional option within expanded universe of possibilities. Footsteps in the corridor announced Adric's approach before library doors opened to admit his tall figure. Morning sunlight emphasizing silver threads among raven hair and new lines of contentment softening once severe features. His customary reserve had gradually yielded to quiet expressiveness in Seraine's presence, though public formality remained unchanged. "Good morning," he greeted her, closing the journal with gentle deference to privacy. "Mrs. Winters inquires whether breakfast in the conservatory proves acceptable given unusually mild weather." "Perfect," Seraine replied, accepting his offered arm with natural ease developed through months of evolving relationship. "The orchids have finally bloomed. Purple ones father always favored. I noticed them yesterday during afternoon reading. Their progress through Thornfield's corridors proceeded with comfortable synchronicity, conversation flowing naturally between practical household matters and personal observations. The awkwardness following interrupted garden declaration had gradually dissolved through honest communication and mutual decision to allow relationship development without artificial acceleration or external pressure. The conservatory welcomed them with fragrant abundance and cheerful birdsong from recently installed aviary. Mrs. Winters had arranged breakfast with characteristic efficiency, tea service, toast rack, preserves, and fresh eggs upon white linen tablecloth dappled with leafy shadows from overhead palms. The solicitor's letter arrived, Adric mentioned, as they settled at the wrought-iron table, positioned to capture morning sunlight without excessive heat. Final arrangements for East Wing renovations require signature before construction commences next week. Seraine accepted teacup with murmured thanks, contemplating this latest development in Thornfield's ongoing transformation. The East Wing, once sealed shrine to grief and memory, would soon become school for local children, its abandoned nursery and unused chambers repurposed for education rather than commemoration. "Catherine would have approved," Adric continued, accurately interpreting her thoughtful expression. "She always believed privilege carried obligation toward those with fewer advantages. The school honors her memory more appropriately than sealed rooms and covered portraits. This acknowledgement that his first wife's memory could be honored through living legacy rather than preserved shrine represented profound evolution from grief's paralyzing grip." Photographs of Catherine now stood displayed in family quarters rather than hidden behind locked doors. Occasional stories of shared happiness emerged in evening conversations rather than remaining forbidden topics. "Edward's birthday approaches," Seraine observed gently, referencing their lost son with careful respect rather than anxious avoidance. "Perhaps the school might officially open then, a fitting memorial connecting past grief with future possibility." Adric's expression revealed momentary pain followed by genuine appreciation, a perfect suggestion. The foundation stone could bear his name and birth date, acknowledging what was lost while creating something new from sorrow's ashes. Their marriage, formalized with quiet dignity 3 months earlier, had developed upon unusual foundation, mutual respect for respective losses, shared understanding of society's rigid expectations, appreciation of alternative definitions of family beyond biological continuation. The wedding ceremony, attended by only essential witnesses and Lady Marwen, had focused upon partnership rather than procreation, connection rather than convention. Society's reaction proved predictably mixed. Lady Emmeline's poisonous insinuations circulated briefly through London drawing rooms, before dissipating against evidence of genuine contentment rather than convenient arrangement. Some neighbours maintained disapproving distance, others recognised authentic connection transcending conventional expectations. The village school committee requests your attendance at Thursday's planning session, Adric mentioned, spreading marmalade upon toast with methodical precision. Mrs. Holloway specifically mentioned your suggestions regarding practical curriculum for girls beyond ornamental accomplishments. Seraine smiled, recalling the committee chairwoman's initial skepticism regarding a duchess involving herself with working-class education. I shall prepare proposed reading materials before the meeting. The circulating library promised donation if suitable shelving can be arranged. Their conversation continued with comfortable domesticity, practical matters interspersed with personal observations and occasional gentle teasing. Beyond conservatory windows, Thornfield's grounds displayed spring's transformative persistence. New growth emerging from seemingly barren branches, dormant bulbs pushing through recently frozen earth, life continuing despite winter's temporary dominance. After breakfast, Seraine returned to the library, where correspondence awaited attention. Among various letters, one bore Vale Manor's distinctive seal, Lady Marwyn's weekly communication regarding Dower House progress and cautious personal news. Another, smaller envelope contained Nell's increasingly confident handwriting. The former maid now attended village school while serving as Seraine's occasional lady's companion, her natural intelligence nurtured through educational opportunity previously unavailable. The afternoon brought carriage journey to neighbouring village, where Thornfield's new school project had inspired similar endeavour among progressive landowners. Seraine's involvement, initially viewed with aristocratic suspicion, had gradually earned respect through practical suggestions and genuine commitment rather than ladylike dabbling in charitable causes. Evening found them in Thornfield's library, firelight casting dancing shadows across leather-bound volumes and comfortable furnishings arranged for conversation rather than formal impression. Adric reviewed estate documents, while Seraine completed journal entry begun that morning, record of ongoing transformation from exiled daughter and grieving widower to partnership founded upon mutual respect and genuine affection. I received letter from London publisher today, Adric mentioned without looking up from his papers, regarding your manuscript on female education beyond ornamental accomplishments. They express interest in publication next autumn, with possible speaking engagement if reception proves favourable. Seraine glanced up in surprise. The writing project, begun as personal exploration, gradually developed into potential publication, having received little attention amid numerous other responsibilities. Truly, I had assumed polite rejection inevitable given controversial subject matter. Apparently, controversy sells remarkably well when presented with sufficient intellectual foundation and practical application, he replied, genuine pride evident beneath matter-of-fact delivery. The publisher specifically mentioned your approach balancing traditional feminine virtues with expanded educational opportunity. This unexpected development, professional recognition beyond domestic sphere or charitable involvement, represented yet another expansion of possibilities previously deemed unavailable, not replacement for marital contentment or community engagement, but additional dimension within life, increasingly defined by choice rather than limitation. Later that night, as moonlight streamed through bedroom windows and Thornfield settled into peaceful slumber, Seraine lay awake, contemplating life's unpredictable journey. From branded barren and exiled in shame to duchess engaged in educational reform and potential published author. Transformation beyond imagination during those first desperate days, following physician's pronouncement and familial rejection. Beside her, Adric slept peacefully, grief's haunted expression replaced by contentment's relaxed features, his arm curved protectively around her waist even in slumber, connection maintained through unconscious gesture rather than deliberate decision. Their marriage defied conventional assessment or simple categorization. Neither romantic fairy tale nor practical arrangement, but partnership founded upon mutual respect, shared understanding of life's complexities, and genuine affection, developed through honest recognition of respective strengths and vulnerabilities. Children would never arrive to continue Thornfield's aristocratic lineage or inherit Vale family traditions. Yet family had formed nonetheless. Nell's educational advancement, village children benefiting from new school, even cautious reconnection with Lady Marwyn, creating connections beyond biological reproduction or conventional definition. Spring moonlight illuminated the bedchamber, casting silver pathways across polished floorboards and ancient furnishings. Outside, Thornfield's garden slumbered beneath gentle breeze, rose bushes preparing fresh blooms and dormant seeds, awaiting morning sunlight to continue growth's endless cycle. Within this peaceful sanctuary, Seraine offered silent gratitude for journey's unexpected turns and surprising destinations. From branded Barren and sent away in shame, to finding love with grieving Duke who whispered, "I need your love," that autumn evening in Thornfield's rose garden. Words neither practiced declaration nor calculated strategy, but honest recognition of mutual healing and shared possibility. Life had not followed expected path or fulfilled conventional expectations. Instead, it had offered alternative definition of fulfillment beyond biological function or societal approval. The dower house stood ready should independent residence ever prove necessary or desirable, yet Thornfield had transformed from exile's refuge to genuine home through conscious choice rather than desperate necessity. As sleep finally claimed her consciousness, Seraine's thoughts returned to journal entry completed that evening, reflection upon life's capacity for renewal and unexpected blooming, despite winter seasons of rejection and dormancy. Society declares certain vessels damaged beyond purpose, women without fertility, men without heirs, hearts bearing grief's permanent scars. Yet damaged vessels often hold most precious contents, preserving essence more carefully, precisely because of acknowledged fragility. Like Thornfield's dormant roses, awakening after winter's apparent death, human hearts possess remarkable capacity for renewal when permitted authentic connection beyond conventional expectation or rigid judgment. Branded barren by those claiming to love me, I discovered fertility beyond biological reproduction, nurturing educational opportunities, cultivating genuine partnerships, growing compassion from rejection's bitter soil. The grieving Duke, who whispered need for love beyond physical continuation, has taught me that family transcends bloodline, that connection flourishes precisely where limitation once appeared insurmountable. Spring returns to Thornfield once more, not erasing winter's passage but incorporating its necessary dormancy within larger cycle of renewal and transformation. So too with human hearts, not forgetting previous seasons of rejection or grief, but allowing new growth to emerge precisely where barrenness once appeared permanent and defining. Perhaps that represents love's truest miracle, not that it exists despite imperfection, but that it flourishes precisely through acknowledged vulnerability and shared limitation. Not perfect vessels performing flawless functions, but damaged souls recognizing mutual worth beyond society's narrow definitions and rigid expectations. In a world that often measures human worth by predetermined functions and societal expectations, our greatest strength lies in our capacity to redefine value and purpose. True fulfillment comes not from meeting external standards, but from embracing our authentic selves, imperfections and all. Like Seraine and Adric, we may discover that our perceived limitations become the very foundations upon which meaningful connections are built. The labels society places upon us, barren, damaged, insufficient, hold power only when we accept them as definitive truth, rather than seeing them as merely one dimension of our complex humanity. Love, in its purest form, does not seek perfection or utility, but recognizes inherent worth beyond conventional standards. It flourishes not despite our wounds, but through the vulnerability they create, allowing authentic connection impossible between supposedly flawless beings. Perhaps our greatest legacy is not what we produce or continue, but how we transform suffering into compassion, rejection into understanding, and limitation into opportunity. In doing so, we create ripples that extend far beyond biological offspring or societal validation, touching lives through quiet acts of courage and persistent belief in possibility beyond apparent barrenness. Did this story touch your heart? If the journey of Seraine and Adric moved you, from rejection to redemption, from isolation to connection, please subscribe to our channel for more tales of healing, hope, and love's transformative power. Share in the comments which moment resonated most deeply with you. Was it Seraine finding strength despite being branded barren, the Duke's vulnerable confession, or perhaps their mutual recognition that true value transcends society's narrow definitions? Your engagement helps these stories reach others who might find comfort and courage in them. Remember, like the characters in our tale, your story continues beyond limitation, always unfolding toward unexpected possibility.